So today feels appropriate to start with a little gratitude that it will not be the third day that I get shat upon by a bird in a row doing one of these videos. Although they were hilarious. um, yeah, my problem child is being a problem again. She just got a walk. It's like 100 degrees out here, and she's mad I'm not throwing her toy again. So, yeah, we're going to contend with that for a little bit. But anyway, she's hitting the frisbee on my shoe and knocked him off the ramp. So yeah, I was thinking that, I've said many times that it felt like June 18th and 19th were going to be important for some reason, but I didn't know why. And then on the 17th this week, I pulled 6 cards from this one deck, but the first one was the transformation card, and it was the butterfly, and it talked about, when the caterpillar goes into the chrysalis, it's not about making little changes, it's about completely transforming and becoming something else, when it comes out the butterfly. So, and then the last one that day was Healing Chaos, and I had this picture of a tornado with all these little butterflies in and around it, and so obviously that got my attention since the first one was a picture of a butterfly and talking about the butterfly, and then the last one had butterflies in it, and it talked about how sometimes chaos is the best activator for deep healing. So that seems legit. And then, I started on the 18th. That was the day that it started with a squirrel, turns out, throwing grass at me, and then a bird shitting on me later. And of course, that one it did not even register what had happened until afterwards when I was looking at my shirt. It's like, I thought it was rain. Was that actually bird poop? And I was like, oh yeah, it was. So, yeah. And it was more entertaining for me because because I manifested it. Because when the squirrel threw the grass at me, I thought it was a bird initially, and I said, oh well, as long as it's not shitting on me. And then so it did. And then I didn't even catch it. So then, I go and do a video. Well, after it occurred to me what had actually happened, I did a second video that day so I could kind of laugh at myself. No. And then yesterday I was doing another one. I don't even remember what all. Oh yeah, it was the pulling weeds thing. So yeah, while I'm in the middle of talking about all this stuff, and I actually got shat upon in the middle of a video and realized what had happened, and it was entertaining, and I laughed a lot. So yeah, good times. And it goes to, I think, support that healing chaos thing. It's like I got warned the day before, on the 17th, that something was going to happen. I just didn't know what it was. And then the 18th and 19th were both kind of big in the process of, healing chaos. But that butterfly card, talking about transformation, you don't just change 2 or 3 things, you go in and become something completely different. And then I was just kind of thinking today about how this this whole journey has been really kind of interesting for me, just, sitting back and watching what happens as it happens. Like it started with, okay, I did no, take a break. I started my YouTube channel back in November, actually on November 11th, but, I deleted all those videos, of course. But I kept having stuff pop up about it's still working, even though I had taken everything down at that point. And I think the point was it was still working for me, because it already had changed so much about what I had already always seen acceptable for me or not. And like I've talked about my traumatic brain injury before, and the big thing with that is I went from, like, when I was growing up, there was a lot of stuff. It's like, or I would get made fun of for my voice or for my teeth or whatever else. And it got to a point where I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to smile, didn't want to do anything like that. So, and God, reading in class about killed me. I get so much anxiety just around that alone. So asking questions was pretty much out of the question a lot of times. And when I got the TBI, it got to a point where it was like a reset button had been hit in my life. And I realized that pretty quick, because there were like all these gaps in what I was able to pick up and learn. And I realized that it's like the way I've always gotten by was not going to work this time around. And if I was in grad school, I just had my first semester in when I got the TBI. And it's like, if I'm going to pass grad school, I'm going to have to start talking and asking questions, because otherwise it's just not going to work. And so I did. And interestingly enough, I actually, in my entire lifetime, my grad school career is when I got my highest GPA. And I think it was largely because I was actually putting forth more effort on trying to learn the stuff and not just going with whatever I caught and ignoring the rest. Not ideal for note taking, but I did far too much that way. Undergrad and everything. And another big thing, don't you bring that to me, was got distracted by the dog. Oh, writing. So in undergrad, I was really bad about not putting forth the effort to turn in the decent papers. I would, y'all, hey, I saw him. It's okay. Thank you. Hey, thank you. Zibby. Zibbity. Hey, thank you. She's just gonna keep telling me about it, I think. God, that scared me. Thought I had a bug fall on my shoulder or something, or fall on my shirt or something. It was just my earring. Anyway, so like I was really bad about not. Okay, I appreciated that I could stay up all night and write a paper last minute and turn it in. I didn't reread it enough or pay close enough attention to the fact that they were frequently garbage until I was in grad school and had one instructor that said, "Don't you dare turn in a first draft in this class." And it was early on, one of the first writing assignments we had, but it was like, all right, so we're gonna have to put forth the effort, right? And this is gonna drive me nuts, so hold on. I've messed Gidget up because I just took her frisbees and put my flip-flops on them. No, leave it. Yeah. But anyway, that was one of the big things. Is like he said, "Don't you dare turn in a rough draft or a first draft in this class." He said that does not work for grad school, and so I was like, "All right, that's fair." And then I started paying attention to the fact that it's like, she just took off with the frisbee and took my flip flop like 3 feet away. Okay, so I've heard some things talking, like people with writing and stuff. I did this. Hay House has had some writer workshops that I've jumped in on a couple times, and one of the things they were pretty adamant about was the rough draft. It's not about being perfect. It's getting it out and having it out of your system. And then, there was also a 21-day book writing challenge that I did, I think back in 2020. And he was very particular about, do not edit yourself in the first draft, just get it on paper. And of course, if I have a typo or something, it's like I got to go back and fix that. I can't not see that. But I got the point about the importance was just getting it out of your system. Here we go again. Yeah, so I think that's been part of this journey as well. Like, okay, so I have mentioned that way back when, I want to say like when I was in high school, I had this thought where I thought it'd be kind of cool if I started writing and like told the story about everything that was happening. So whenever I do meet whoever he was, that I would know my journey and have that down. And then, this whole twin flame thing came up. I mean, it's been a process of coming up. It's something that the journey I knew about when I was 4. That there was somebody specific that I was meant to be with, and that there would be this long journey. There would be a lot of pain and a lot of healing in the process, but it would be the one that ends with, happily ever after. So, yeah. So that was always big. And, of course, that song, Somewhere Out There, I used to just just check out and go somewhere else in my head, my thoughts, feelings, all that stuff every time I heard that song. And it is on my one go-to Sappy playlist now, and I find that it will frequently come up. Mind you, I have like 7 hours worth of music in this playlist that I put there, and it frequently comes up. So yeah, Tazzy. And then the idea of Twin Flames came up in 2012. It was before I married my ex-husband, and at the time I was learning about this thing, I very much knew he was not that person. But I also had this sort of idea that the person I thought it was at the time, which was Tyler, that I've talked about on here a ton, that was just somehow something that was never meant to be, and all the times I felt like I was being nudged to reach out to him and connect with him, it's like I resisted it very much. I just saw 429 on the clock, which is his birthday numbers. So yeah. And then it's like I knew there was something big around that time frame that was important for me as well. But as a sort of matter of pushing it as far away as I could, I jumped into this marriage situation with somebody that I very much knew I was not supposed to be with, and yet, for whatever crappy beliefs I had about myself and life in general, up until that point, it seemed like, or it felt like I had no other choice. Even though, I mean, realistically, there was a lot that could have been better. But, I've long known that divorce was meant to be part of my path, and I've said that many times. And, that one goes back to okay, my cousin was one of, she was my hero when we were growing up. She was a year and a half older than me. Our moms are cousins, and our grandmas are sisters. So she was my absolute hero. And when her parents got divorced, she ended up having to move away and live with her dad. But one day she came over and stayed all night with me and brought a Ouija board. We didn't really know anything about them, just screwing around with it. And in hindsight, I know that was less than ideal. However, there's a lot more to I think the big thing is closing off the connection and not just leaving it open, which that's not something we knew about then. And you think it's just a game when you're kids, right? So, anyway, we are messing around with this Ouija board, and honestly, I didn't really remember anything about it, but my brother has had some things that have always kind of stayed with him, and that was one of them. He said that I told him we talked to somebody claiming to be Jim Morrison and that I would be getting divorced, but one day he would get married and he never would. And he said it's always stuck out to him. And it's well, maybe that's where the idea that I had to go through this thing came from. But I think it was more than just that. It's the fact that, my grandfather's always been big about our family doesn't get divorced, So that's just something that I always heard. And I always felt like, because he was so dead set on, we're somehow better than that, I knew that was my, part of my destined path, because, I had to show that just because you end up in a situation where you have to get one, it doesn't mean you're completely garbage and doomed for a life of misery after that. And in fact, this past year has been absolutely one of my favorites, and has, I've learned so much about myself this year, and for that I'm forever grateful. And that links in with the fact that I've had to sort out how I got into a situation with somebody who hated me as much as I felt my ex did. And honestly, I think as much as anything, that was a hated women thing. And I always thought that. But I also felt sorry for him because, well, for a lot of things. Anyway, that's irrelevant. We're not going to go that path. But seeing how some of the things that the belief systems that I had, where they came from, seeing how they led me into that situation, and then getting to a point where once I was making all these connections with where things were coming from, then I was able to disconnect and, start being able to do the healing process. And that has been a journey, a big journey. Excuse me. See where I'm going with this. Yeah. So back to this twin flame thing. In 2021, I think, is when I got part of this one girl's courses that she had put out for Twin Flames, and there's some meditations and stuff in it, and just learning about it and more about it. And it's just, I had this sense that was a big part of my path, but I didn't really understand it. And so I got this stuff to try to learn more, and I started listening to like these binaural beats things that, it's like different frequencies for heart healing and all this stuff. And a couple of them that I was listening to all the time talked about Twin Flame Reunion, and it's like, all right, so I feel like this is a big part of whatever's going on. And so I started putting some time in it, but I didn't really know anything more than that, other than it did resonate, and then there were some things where, in hindsight, I see how, it's like the universe was directing me to, hey, go this way, and nudge me in the right direction to be able to make some of the connections that I have since been able to make. And, I made a couple joking remarks, half joking, about like, to a former friendly acquaintance, more than a friend, about this one person. It's like, maybe I should manifest one of those. And I didn't even really understand that it was more than just a joke at that point. I just thought it was something that was just, I don't know. I was just joking about it because every now and then I got the idea that I might want to see what's out there, and that was the case back then. And then this person seemed somehow resonant, but at the same time, I didn't really take it seriously as a possibility, because at the time I perceived myself so poorly still. Taz! The cousin's out. I still perceived myself not that well. And so I was like, yeah, he's out of my league, And then she said something like before I said that, and it's like, yeah, that's yeah. It's like realizing that I did believe he was out of my league, right? But then it was like there was this whole thing where the universe just kind of, it's like, all right, you're gonna talk like that, then you don't need to have access to any of this. And my dog's back. I don't know. He's suddenly aware that I was around other dogs or the puppy today. Hi. Yes, I love you so much. You're such a good boy. Okay, thank you. So yeah, it was like the universe was like, okay, you're not going to take this seriously, then we're just shutting that off again. Ugh, ew, where did that come from? I know where it came from. It came from his nasty butt. Well, not his butt, but the front end. But it's still nasty. The other day he slurped me and got me all muddy. I don't know what that was. But, yeah, so like the door slammed on that whole possibility. And then it's like all, it was on like Facebook's dating app and like a couple other dating sites. And it's like all at once, all the people that made me realize that those were not the kinds of people I wanted to meet started showing up. It's like, okay, yeah, we're just going to be done with this because that's not going to work out. And, I've said multiple times in that time frame that just fell off the platform. um, Here, you want to get a picture? There you go. Okay, thank you. Thank you, that's nice. Okay, that's enough. So slurpy. Yeah, so I was like, clearly I'm not going to find whatever it is I'm looking for here. I was like, you know what, just put this random thought out there, but not quite entirely out there, of I'd rather meet somebody organically anyway and not on social media or one of these dating apps or whatever. It's like I just knew that whoever it was that I was meant to meet was not going to show up there. And God, Tess, got my leg muddy. Yeah, so then, oh, we're back to chasing lightning bugs. Then, back in late summer, early fall, I just decided, like, oh, that one almost might have had one light. Well, at least it's not a bird pooping on me. Just get attacked by lightning bugs instead. I don't know where it went. Got dog mud on my shirt. Damn, dude. Yeah, so I set the intention, or I watched a sappy movie and started thinking, well, maybe. And then it was like, you know what? Give it all over to the universe, because clearly I cannot do this on my own. It has not gone well. You know, so career and love life got handed over. Well, then, one day, I am directed to this song on social media, and it's like, I was like, man, I feel this one all the way through. And then it was like the universe was like, that's it, that's the one, that's right there, that's him. It's like, what? You know, and initially it was kind of a, what? Yeah, right. You know, and after my yeah, right, because I think I even posed it at that point of, he's out of my league. What? Yeah. And then I was like, that little voice that's always talking to me said, are you going to let us do it, or are you going to try to take it back and do it your way? It's like, well, that hasn't gone well, so we're not going to do that. So, okay, what do I have to lose? So, you know, so then I started what happened? Oh, the immediate thing that started happening was, okay, and it wasn't like, I don't know where it fit in exactly. Like, one day I got out of the shower, and I always listen to music when I'm in the shower, and I was sitting on the side of the bathtub in my towel, and I had all these bruises up and down my legs from the factory job that I had at the time. And you know, that voice just starts talking to me softly, and it says, one of these days you're gonna want to be with somebody again. Do you really want to meet them looking like that? And it's like, no. As a matter of fact, I don't. You know, so then it was trying to figure out how to get out of that whole scenario too, because at the time I was thinking, I need the job, I need the money, blah blah blah. And then I started, you know, and when that part came up, it's like his face kind of came into view energetically, and it was like he was the one that was asking me, and it was like, I'm responding to it and thinking, but who says it's you? How is that possible? How is that the expectation for my life? That seems weird. That seems lofty, and still wasn't entirely ready to embrace the idea, because I was still not viewing myself very well. Hey, quit. Taz. Oh, 3 inches out of my reach to catch him in the butt with my toe. His little nub. But then I went to the zoo with my mom, my aunt, and Gracie. Quit. We don't need to talk about it. It's all right. They can be in their yard. And it was somehow like he was right there with me the entire day. It's like talking to me, laughing with me, all sorts of stuff. It's like, this is trippy. And then that started a whole series of things. That's so rude. Hi, that's kind of rude too. But, yeah, okay. So yeah, like all this stuff just started like shifting into focus. And then while I was kind of having these things that were coming to mind, I realized that had been happening for a while. I just wasn't really, like, I was aware of it, but not fully aware of it. I just thought it was daydreaming. Because after I made the comment about maybe I should manifest one of those, then I started having these little daydreams pop up where, like, I would go to the gas station with my aunt to continue the beverage habit. And it's like I kept having these flashes of bumping into him and meeting him for the first time. And there were like different types of scenarios that would lead to it, but I didn't really understand what it was or why, and I thought it was just a daydream, so I didn't really take it seriously anyway. It was just like, how is it always you? And back in the fall, after the deal with the zoo, then, I was kind of having this conversation with that voice in my head again. It's like, how is it not out of my league and beyond what I could possibly expect for my life? And then there were these things that popped up, stuff on social media or whatever, and like one of my thoughts was, I don't even know if we have anything in common. And then I started seeing, all the stuff on social media that would pop up. It's like, okay, obviously we have some stuff in common. Just, I don't know, obscure things like with, I don't even know what. Well, I mean, I know a couple things, but yeah. Decor type stuff. And then another thing that came to mind was all the times in my life that it's like his name has always been around me and sort of dancing in the periphery of my existence, and I was mostly oblivious to it, except for there was like the one girl in my Bible study in undergrad who was married to somebody by the same name, and she would say his name, and I swear it's like every single time it's just, I got this swoony feeling. It's like, what is it about that name, and a lot of things. So it's like, oh, well, this is like literally always been there in some way. So yeah, this would be so much easier if you'd stop bringing me that. Let's see if I can get her again. Yeah, she just wants to prison. She don't care about nothing else. Just wants to play. Not right now. Take a break. Take a break. Yeah. So there was that whole thing. So then, you know, the whole YouTube thing started because I literally had this thought of, obviously, if that is the person that I've been waiting for all my life, he had to be somewhere I could find him, but how would he find me? You know, so then it was, well, I gotta do something. It's not doing anything is not going to work. So I did my one thing where I went live on Instagram and cried afterwards because it was like less than a minute and it just was so overwhelming. And it was a lot like that whole traumatic brain injury thing where it was like kind of like a sort of reset for what I always believed to be true for myself. And you know, with the TBI, I kind of refused to I knew I wasn't going to be able to fall back into old habits and make any kind of strides in a favorable direction, you know, like passing grad school, if I didn't start doing things a little differently, you know. And that's kind of what the Instagram thing was, you know. And that was kind of funny because back in 2020 during the whole pandemic, when Tony Robbins was doing these events on Zoom, you know, I did one of those and he challenged the group to go live on Facebook or whatever. And at the time I was like, well, that's not going to be what I'm doing, so why would I do that? So then, you know, after this whole twin flame thing comes up, then it's like, I gotta do something because I can't just do what I've always done, because that's clearly not going to get me anywhere. Because so far in life, it hasn't gotten me anywhere other than a lot of headaches and heartaches and all that fun stuff. So, yeah. So, where's that one backwards? Oh. So then I put like a few YouTube videos up and it's like, okay, and it started getting to a point where it was almost fun. But then there was also the part where I spent a lot of time crying, and I kept thinking about, it's like, I can't keep going into the negative stuff all the time, right? You know, it's like, I couldn't make sense of how I've always known that the life that I've led, there are lots of stories that I'm meant to share to help other people find their own healing. But at the same time, you know, how do you disconnect from those stories being the main focus when you can't? It's like they were so much in my system that I had to find a way to get them out of my system, which has ended up being talking. You know, and I really don't want that. Yeah, so back in March, then I have this dream, and you know, there's like all these, you know, it seems like travel memories and stuff, and it seems like they were memories of my twin flame through his life, and I felt like I couldn't look at them because that felt like it would I don't know, like it wasn't my business. Excuse me. And I don't want that either. We're gonna have a little collection of frisbees and balls. So yes, this is the start of it. So anyway, I have this dream, and you know, there's all these videos playing on the walls, but I don't feel like I can or like that's any of my business. So it's like trying, like I glance at them every now and then, but I can't really focus on them. But then there's this scene where I'm in this bathroom and there's a girl sitting outside of the stall and she's talking to me. And she says that, what was it? She said that I need to start sharing the story that I already have to tell before more of my mission would be made clear. And it would take some time for it to gain momentum, but that it would. They're back. And anyway, yeah. So tedious. Gidgy, thank you. Go over there if you want to bark. So yeah, that I needed to share the story that I already had to share before more would be revealed. Hey, thank you. Gidge. Gidge. They may potentially be coming this way. Oh, it looks like they kind of are. I don't know where they're going. I don't know what they're doing. They don't have a puppy though, so they're probably not coming over here. You got them all excited. So yeah, she's trying to figure out what I'm doing now. They're apparently taking a lamp to my father to fix. So anyway, and they're like, "What are you doing?" It's like, I told you, this is where I come to collect toys, and we don't play over on this side of the yard. Oh, don't come in the yard. Okay. So yeah, but I had to start sharing the story that I already had to tell, right? So there's a chance that they might all come out here because I'm being weird. I'm talking to my phone. Oh my god. So anyway, yeah, so there's been a lot of times where I have spent a lot of time crying through these stupid videos and being pissed through these stupid videos and everything, and I still don't want it. And yeah, so I've realized that has been an important part of my process, because it's only been in, it's like talk therapy. It's like only through talking about it do you actually get it out of your system and be able to make space to talk about other stuff and be able to, make some of the connections that I've made, like the whole deal with boundaries and how you can zoom all the way in on that and zoom all the way back out, and it's like, oh, yep. It looks like, the whole boundary thing, it looks like me fighting with my dad because he's sending me all the shit that I don't want, but it goes all the way back to the church and how it's encouraged people to run over the boundaries of other people, like that whole Crusades thing, and the fact that they're out there trying to save the heathens, and in doing so it gets to a point of being okay to kill the heathens if they choose not to convert to their religion, so this is like big ongoing things that didn't form overnight. Then the stuff with my dad, that didn't happen overnight. That's been this whole lifetime of stuff that's come up and been difficult. But I didn't even realize why it was difficult like it was until I started processing through them and getting them out of my system, or getting these stories out of my system. And I was like, oh, well, that all makes sense. And it's interesting because as it almost sounded like somebody was coming outside. And I keep sticking to, the decal on my shirt keeps sticking to the shed. Like as I've been thinking about it, especially as I get the stuff out of my system, it's like I realize that I don't fault my dad for any of this because it's all so much bigger than just me or him, and this has been like hundreds of years worth of stuff in the making that's led to these kind of issues, and just all compounding together. And yeah, and then like oddly like it's when he's not doing the things that, okay, I can always see that he's still living from his own wound, but at the same time it doesn't feel like something that I have to take as personally because I've been processing through it and realizing where it's been coming from and getting it out of my system. Yeah. And it's kind of funny, like this whole boundaries thing, I'm kind of having fun with it. Because earlier, there was that, okay, my grandpa has had chemo 2 days this week, Tuesday and Wednesday. I think we're on Thursday now. So, yeah. Yeah. So, my mom and my aunt went and got donuts to take over there and then go have everybody go visit. So, he would kind of feel a little better about things, right? So when I got there, they were just watching these weird YouTube videos. My grandma likes putting on things with like, I don't know, like it was talking about idiots on the internet or something. And people trying to gas up Teslas and that kind of stuff. And not being able to figure out where the gas goes in. And people unloading heavy appliances from the back of semis by gutting it and letting everything fly out and that kind of dumb shit. So they were watching this kind of stuff and weren't really talking when I got in there. So it's like, all right, this is fine. So I get my donut and I go over and sit in my normal spot, which is on there. They have a window seat that I've always loved, and that's always been my spot. So I went and sat down on the window seat, and almost immediately my mom starts talking about political shit. So I sit there, finish my donut, then I get up and say, okay, see you later. And they're like, wait, where are you going? You're leaving already? It's like, well, if you're going to talk about that crap, yeah, I'm going to leave already. And then it's this big deal of, don't leave, and then they finally changed the subject. So I stood in the doorway of the room that they were in and just kind of stayed back there for a little bit to make sure that they were done with that conversation. And they didn't go back to it. So it's like, all right. So I went in and sat back down. And that was the end of that for then. Eventually my grandma went from playing these dumb videos to pulling up something where so-and-so gets called out by somebody else and blah, blah, blah. And it's all like just bullshit. So she puts on this guy that's like bitching about like political stuff and goes back to playing her computer. It's like, this is literally not appropriate for the 8-year-old in the room, because the guy on the TV is throwing around stuff like talking about cock and weird stuff. probably gender related drama, but he's throwing that around and she's not watching it. It's like, this is not something we need on the TV anyway. You know. So Gracie got the remote and she's all ready to change it, but she doesn't know what to put on and can't get out of it quick enough. It's like, somebody, one of the grown-ups, turn the damn channel. Nope, we can't do that. So Gracie's like trying to go through it, and she said she saw some words on that channel. It's like, well, don't say those words. It's like, you need a little more time and experience and understanding before you're allowed to use a lot of those words. That's just all there is to it. But yeah, like, she was just completely didn't get it. Didn't see why it was a problem, just saw me bitching. And it's like, you know what? I'm kind of enjoying the part where I can speak up more, and I'm not telling them they can't do it. I'm just leaving when they do. You know, and it's working so far. You know, like I've mentioned that one conversation with my one aunt, the one that lives next door and is currently over here, where she said she doesn't understand why it's such a problem if they know that I'm going to leave, that they always want to put it on. It's like, you know, because me and her, I told her she's the least negatively inclined of all of them, because she does get that point and she is able to kind of look at things a little differently. And she said that one of the things that got her attention on that end was, you know, she was mad at her husband's mom because of the way she had treated her husband, like, for his entire life, and the way she'd screwed him over and all this stuff. And it was after she had died, and her husband said, look, she can't do anything to hurt you. It was like, so all you're doing by remembering only this stuff is hurting yourself. And she said that was one of the biggest things that made her realize that she needed to not do that. And, you know, so, okay, that's one of them. It still doesn't get the rest of them handled, but, you know, I think as I'm starting to see this in action, you know, and like telling the stories that I have had to share, it's making room for the other stuff to come up. And for this week, that was the healing chaos. Involving me getting shat upon by a bird 2 days in a row, or by birds, because that second one was definitely a lot bigger, more impressive than the other one. Yeah, what a mess. No Gidget, I still don't want it. The fourth ball has made it to the platform. Yeah. So I'm realizing that it's taken me being able to tell these stories to get them out of my system and to be able to make more connections. You know, it's like witnessing them for what they are. And yeah, there's been a lot of stuff that has had a lot of pain attached to it, but once I get it out of my system, then it's not like when I've revisited it later, it hasn't affected me in quite the same way. Yeah, granted, I've had lots of videos crying on here. And when I started back in March, it's like my cousin said that she noticed that I seem a lot more confident about what I'm doing, and you know, I think a lot of that comes out in the fact that I'm able to laugh at myself, especially as extensively as I did yesterday. Yeah, oh my god, so I watch the videos I do after I do them, before I post them, and it's kind of, yesterday it was entertaining the crap out of me that I was like forgetting all these words, like, oh, I couldn't remember the word for thistle, so I put that in over the top of the video, in text. And then the other one was hormones. Like, I couldn't remember what I was talking about for that, and it was just like something. You know, it's like, oh my god. I was laughing at myself for that one too, because I mean, they're important to the stories that I was telling, but at the same time, not, I mean, it's not the end of the world that I couldn't think of the word, and God knows it's not going to be the last time I can't think of a word. You know, especially since I got my TBI, like, that's a common thing where I'm thinking of some things, I know they're related to something, but then there's like this big gap in like the whole thing. It's like, what? What is that? You know, and I think seeing that, you know, I was laughing at myself when those two things came up on my, when I was watching it. And then it's like, I would go in and, you know, that's the first like 14 minutes of the video. There were two things that I fixed like that. I was like, I do start slow. You know, but then like once things start coming together, then once I get into the flow, it starts going a lot more smoothly. And usually, I mean, sometimes I still sound silly, but yeah, it is what it is. Yeah. Kid's just still staring at me. She's just being quiet about it. I don't know if there's anything else I want to include on this whole one. It's like was in flow, had thought. And I kind of fly through it, and then all at once it just comes to a big pause. It's like, wait, is that everything? Are we sure? Yeah. It might be everything. Nope, gnat. Like, I think I have an ant on my finger. That was a gnat. Yeah. I can't think of anything else that I want or need to include on this, so... Oh, wait. I was going to... Oh, yeah. So, I pulled my cards for today. More of the Divine Masters Oracle. I just kind of look at my cards. It's like, which one wants to talk to me today? And, you know, the first card that I pulled out was El Moria. And the thing that stood out on that one was... Okay, so it was spiritual force field, and it talks about how you have to feel safe in order to I read it like 3 times before I came out here, and then I forgot all about it until just now, so okay. Talking about divine protection, and in order to learn some of the lessons that you're meant to learn, you have to be able to let down your defenses. And in order to do that, you have to feel safe and protected. And it's like, so, okay, this twin flame thing, journey, has been the big thing that has finally helped me to find that. You know, because I remember thinking, like, when I first started learning anything about, like, the chakra system, how it was root, sacral, and solar plexus are the ones that, safety and security comes from. And I remember the entire time, the first couple of years I got back after my divorce, feeling very much not safe, and aggravated that anything that had happened had been able to happen. And ouch. Once I started realizing or making some of the connections that I have on the twin flame journey, because the big thing is about coming into unity within yourself before the outer union can happen. And, a big part of that is reconciling the masculine and feminine aspects within yourself. So I was thinking about how I've always had this sense that, like, my inner voice, that nice gentle voice that's always been talking about me and giving me the big important lessons along the way, always seemed masculine. And I didn't really understand why or think too much about it, other than the time when I was most actively seeking a means for committing suicide, and not having any luck. There was like that voice again. I ended up in the bathroom in front of the mirror, and I was just tearing everything apart that I could. It's like, this is ugly, this isn't perfect, blah, 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 and, just tearing myself down. And it was like there was this hand that raised my chin and made me look myself in the eye and said, "You are far more beautiful than you will ever know." And I cried and quit on the attempt, because I was actively trying to tear myself down in all these ways, because I thought it would push me into doing this thing that I was so desperate to do, just to end and get rid of all the pain that I kept feeling in my life. And then out of nowhere, here's this voice that's talking to me, and since it seemed masculine, and church insight always makes you think, Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Well, obviously they're turning the feminine into a ghost so we can just get rid of her altogether, right? But that was a big part of the whole thing. And when that happened, I always just figured like that was kind of voice of God stuff. And now I'm feeling like, divine counterpart stuff for sure. 333 on the clock as I said that. And realizing that, and I've always been really protective of what I would now call divine masculine. But before, I would just have called the good guys, people like my brother who actively go out of their way to not be assholes and make other people's lives more difficult and get shat upon by the world. My ex-brother-in-law with the stuff that he got drug into just because he was the younger brother of my ex. My former stepson, and just because his parents were wounded children that had not gone through any of the stuff to get their own healing. Not doing their own healing work led to him getting weaponized between the two of them. So like stuff like that. The friends and brother types that I've had over the years that always made me feel safe at some capacity and gave me space to exist and be just space to exist, and that not to be a problem. Like my friend Charlie, that I still call him one of my good friends, and we don't talk a whole lot. The last time was around his wedding, which has been a couple years now. But still, he's one of those people that I've always valued in my life. He was one of the first three people that I told about my suicide attempt. Him and the guy that I ended up dating after that. They were always like kind of a safe space for me to be me. And even though there was this big part of me that was striving to cater to everybody else's whims and whether they thought it acceptable for me to exist or not, those two, two of the five I could quickly name, because like my brother is another one, Tyler and Paul. They never contributed to the stuff that made things more difficult for me. They were always supportive in some way. And like my brother and I, we were really close when we were itty bitty, and then there was a span from like middle school and high school where it got kind of rough, and then when he was in the Air Force and I was still here, then we weren't especially close just because we weren't able to talk as regularly, but now we're pretty close again. So he's always been one of those. And then I see all the ways where like it was essentially divine intervention, I guess, that the right combination of events was there to be able to help keep me going. Because like at a time where we didn't know about like all these all the rocks and everything. And I didn't know that my whole freaking astrological chart is a flood, a fiery flood. And I have no earth in my chart whatsoever, but my brother is a Capricorn, so he's always been like the one grounding piece. And yeah, just seeing a lot of the connections, like I've said before that I watched that Gem Goddess tarot reading back in 2020, and she said black dogs are important. And then it's like, obviously, well, that means something, and it was black dogs are important and means it's close. And it's like, well, obviously something's happening, because this is the only time in my life I've ever had black dogs, and I have 3 that are mostly black. So and then when I started taking the classes at the little metaphysical shop, then like in the first one we talked about how black is a grounding and protective color, just frequency wise, and in the next class the other teacher said she always sees black as the color of source, because all things come from the void or come out of nothing. And it's like, as soon as like that was hearing about it as a grounding, shielding, protective color came up in the Thursday night class, and the following Wednesday was when it being linked with source came up. And then, I mean, that hit me in a big kind of way, because then I was realizing that, you know, I was in this toxic marriage that, you know, my brother and I weren't especially close in that time frame, just because our lives had taken us different places, and he also never liked my ex, but didn't feel like he was close enough in my life anymore to have been able to say something without it being a problem. So he didn't. It's like, that's funny, because if you would have, that probably would have been a thing to stop it. You know, but it was something that I was meant to do on the path, just to show that it's not the end of the world by any means, in spite of what anybody else wants to believe about it. You know, so then I'm looking at these dogs and realizing, you know, that at a time I was unable to protect myself. You know, like the Kelpie was the first one, and the whole reason we got her was because Kelpies were my ex's dream dog, and he claimed, personally I don't think he actually gives a shit about dogs anyway, but he'd had one, claimed it adored him, had a picture of him with it, but yet his first ex had taken it, and the cats, I don't know, but he didn't get any of the animals. And so the Kelpie was the one that started it all, and she was very much his idea. And then, you know, we had another one that we had in between there, but she was a blue pit, and I've talked about her in another video, you know, and we weren't able to keep her, and that was something that was always devastating to me, because I felt like I let her down. And, you know, I think if you've seen any of my videos, you can tell that I'm pretty partial to my dogs, and they make appearances frequently. So, you know, they're right here close to me as I'm doing them all the time, except for when they gotta go bark at the fence or whatever. Yeah, but, you know, after we ended up taking the pit back to the rescue, then we had several months where, like, me and Ziva were just a hot mess, because I had a hard time forgiving myself for not being able to know better and do better with Stormcloud. And so then we started looking at getting Ziva a friend, because she was kind of moping around a lot. Of course, you know, when we first moved to Alabama, the cat had to stay behind, and they had lived together for a long time. And then, of course, I was always bringing her over to visit my mom's dogs, and then, you know, they weren't around either while we were down there. So, you know, when we started, I took her to the dog park pretty regularly, because there was one within walking distance of where we were at. So we'd go there frequently and hang out. And she got so excited when somebody brought in a Sheltie one day, and she just thought they were going to be best friends, and then she approached it, and that dog did not give a shit about her. It's like, oh, it just broke her little heart. It's like, oh. You could just tell, because, you know, my dad's dog has been her best friend. There's 6 months age difference between them, so they were always, you know, super tight. Yeah. So we got Ziva in April that year, and then my parents got Holly in September, I think. She was with a rescue. from a Sheltie hoarding situation. Her and the other one both were rescues from that situation. But anyway, since all her friends were not around, or, I mean, she had the cat at that point, but it still wasn't exactly the same. And then we started talking about getting another dog, and I wanted a rescue. But the big thing, Tess is up here with me, so was because she's always been really high strung since she is a high energy herding breed. I wanted to get something comparable to her energy that would be able to keep up with her. Kind of went a little overboard, I think, because she was 4, I think, when we got, 2017, yeah, she was 4 when we got them. Taz was a little over a year when we got him, and Gidget was 12 weeks. So Taz, we were on a waiting list, but he was nearby, and I don't know, I just really liked him on the picture, and I sent the rescue information saying I was interested, and then, oh, they're back. Let me just pause this for a minute, because I know otherwise I look crazy. That's alright. Who cares if I look crazy, right? They're not talking to me this time around. So, yeah, so we were like 4th on a waiting list for Taz, and so we kept looking in case that fell through. And then he found a local classifieds page that somebody had a Blue Heeler Australian Shepherd mix, the last of the litter, 12 weeks old, and it was like less than 10 minutes away from us. It's like, I mean, that sounds really good too. So we went after her, and I was like, so what are we gonna do if this other dog comes available too? And he's like, why not just have 3? And it's like, okay. I had no problem with that, because I said for a lot of years I felt like 3 was a good number, because okay, if you have 1 and something happens, then you feel bad, and it feels like a replacement when you go to get another one. For if you have 2, then even the other dog feels all upset when something happens to one of them. And then if you have 3, then it felt like you have more time for healing if something happens to one of them, and it doesn't feel like you're going out of your way to replace anybody. Yeah, and that was the big thing. So we ended up with 3, which is kind of a whole, divine number anyway. So yeah, 3 black dogs. And I think back to that last week when I was down there in Alabama, and he had this day where he said I just needed to get laid and then I would stay, and tried to force himself on me, and I shoved him back, and he, because I was kind of lounging on the bed, I was leaning on some pillows, it was just whatever, and I shoved him really hard, and he fell back into this little half wall in between the bathroom and the closet. And as soon as he hit the wall, they were all up and over me. Like, Gidget was laying across my chest, Taz was standing over my waist, and Ziva was standing over my feet. And they were all just growling, snarling at him. Taz and Ziva made it known that he kept going. They definitely were not afraid to bite him. Ziva, I felt like she's always tried to protect me from him when he was around, and that was a big thing. She ain't a very big dog. She's Okay, she's a little overweight. She's like 35 pounds, and she shouldn't be. But she definitely was not afraid to take him on if she would have deemed it necessary. And that was very much how it felt in that moment, and that voice was back and it said, they're doing their job, they're protecting you, now it's your job to protect them. And I just saw my ex down there swatting at Ziva, trying to get her to bite him. And it's like, yep, that was it. I think I want to say that was the last week that we were there. And that was very much, that's a wrap, we're done. And then when I think back to it as this is source protection, because I couldn't have done it, I wouldn't have made the decisions I did if it wasn't for them, because I contended with that suicidal ideation thing the majority of my life. So when I saw it as, it would not have surprised me if he would have tried to kill me, then the concern was, but what would happen to the dogs? And because of that, it's like, nope, can't let that happen. So, yeah. Plus, I already knew how he was with his son's mom, and it's like, I knew very well that he would try to say it was somehow my fault, and he thought himself Mr. Tough Guy enough that he could have made it happen, kind of a thing, as far as the making everybody think I was crazy and that it was his self-defense. He was very much not one of those nice guys that I've always been protective of, but as I've said before, I know at the root of it, I wasn't there for him. I was there to help his brother and his son, to give his son an example of somebody not as jacked up as his parental situation was, so he had the ability to know that he could choose differently for himself. And yes, there were twos all the way across the latter half of that after that. 22 minutes, 22 seconds when I said that. That makes me think to the video where I was talking about my ex and said it was almost as though we were a whole different species from one another. It was 22:22 on the clock. Yeah, that got my attention. Yeah. It continues. Anyway, yeah. Just making some of these connections now. And even I've talked about the dream, I think, where my ex and I were in this pool and he was looking at all these koi fish and he was picking them up and trying to find the perfect color matches together, the ones that looked right together, and then they were everywhere, koi fish. And then as soon as I decided to contribute and start picking them up, they turned into rabbits. And then all the water was gone and they were all just a bunch of rabbits. It's like, And I think, after I've thought about it later, I think that was a big thing to show that we were not the same species. Obviously this time around we're both human, but beyond that, because it's not the only life we've lived, so yeah. Anyway, I've had fun with this one. Never do know where they're going to go anymore. I never have. But, okay, thank you. Hi. Yeah. I think that's all I have for today. We're pushing an hour and a half. I've done that before, but I know it may be hard for people to stay sufficiently entertained in that time. Yes, but, currently I have 8 subscribers. Unless any more have snuck in on me that I haven't seen. The last one I got notified of. Some of them I didn't get notified of. I don't know why. But anyway, I still think that goes back to the whole twin flame thing, that one of these days, when we do finally meet, people are going to be like, who the fuck's this chick? You know, how'd she get with him, right? And then that'll kind of be when any of this stuff gains any steam. You know, and as the girl in my dream said, it would take a while for it to gain momentum, but it would. And, you know, even just on that end, like it's taken a little while for me to gain momentum on getting this other stuff out of my system so I could tell the stories in a way that I think they can be better received, and I think we're getting there now. Especially since we had that whole healing chaos this week. Getting shat upon. But at least I can laugh at myself, so. And I would like to say, I did not do that today, and I did start with a thanks, so I will continue to be thankful for that. And of course for you, whoever's made it this far. As always, I appreciate you, and until the next time, see you later.